JSB Talks Digital Transformation.
Hello and welcome to JSB Talks Digital, the podcast for marketers, digital change agents, and those of you bringing your skills into the digital age. I'm Joanne Sweeney-Burke, and this podcast is brought to you by Digital Training Institute. In this, the first in a series of special shows on digital transformation, I look at the media industry. So coming up in today's episode, I have a digital transformation conversation with Declan Varley, Group Editor of the Galway Advertiser, Athlone Advertiser and Mayo Advertiser. He talks to me about how he led the digital charge in digitizing and monetizing the online print newspaper business in the west of Ireland. Shoutouts to 3 digital features that the Advertiser Group have mastered. In JSB's column, how digital storytelling in the digital age is not that different to my days as a broadcast journalist. And find out what social media tool will help digital transformation.
Digital Transformation Conversation.
So Declan Varley, you are the Group Editor of the Advertiser Group, the Galway Advertiser, the Mayo Advertiser and the Athlone Advertiser. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. And we're going to talk about digital transformation in the media industry, specifically print media. But tell me a little bit about the group of newspapers first.
Well, the Galway Advertiser is unique in one sense in that it was it's a free paper, and it was set up in 1970, maybe 120 years after the bulk of the traditional paid-for papers were set up in Ireland. So it was a very new kid on the block, and coming in as a free paper, people didn't give it much of a chance of surviving. But perhaps maybe it survived because it was in Galway as well. And it was different, and it worked very well, and it was anti-establishment at the time because it was new and fresh and very different, and it has thrived ever since. It has grown with Galway City. It started off as an 8-pager, and now it's 160 pages, maximum, and it's a very successful publication. It was founded by Ronnie O'Gorman, who was a member of the O'Gorman printing family here in Galway. They would have been based in the Eason building there on Shop Street. So Ronnie had a lot of he was old Galway connections, but he came back from London in 1970 with this brash idea of a free paper, and it worked in Galway, and it has worked everywhere else we've tried it as well, so it's great.
So, the Galway Advertiser was disruptive at its time, being anti-establishment, coming into Galway, a free sheet, and let's fast forward, almost 50 years, and you're disrupting again, because what I'm interested in is how you embrace digital transformation in a traditional industry. So you're group editor for many years, so you've gone through different stages in the economy, ups and downs, but now through the digital age, what was your first sense that things were going to change or were changing?
Well, we always felt that the Advertiser was a success because it replicated Galway, and if you look at an Advertiser, maybe 10% of the paper is actually arts and culture and entertainment, and as is the Galway economy, and then another section is property and the retail. So we felt that the Advertiser needed to move with the times, to grow with the times, and it had done that all throughout. So when the internet happened, for us in the mid 90s, we were online in 97, 98, so we just had a website, and it was new, and our stuff went up on that, and we didn't actually do an awful lot with it, just the paper went up on that. So when it came to social media, and a few years ago when I realised that the Advertiser was, it was a 45-year-old or a 40-year-old, and like all 40-year-olds, it needed to look at itself, and it had its own midlife crisis in one sense. So we felt that it needed to engage, and it was still engaging with readers of all ages, because the Advertiser doesn't have any set demographic, because it goes through a letterbox, and we don't know who's the far side of that letterbox. Is it a prince or a pauper? Is it a student or an octogenarian? So we felt that because we were a catch-all, we had to look at a catch-all solution to just keeping up with things. So we started with the social media, perhaps around 2010, 2011. And I remember covering the general election of that year, and when you're covering elections, there's an awful lot of dead time. You'll have an account every 2 or 3 hours, but then there are recounts and there's a lot of dead time. So we decided to fill up the gaps with banter and chat, and just to engage people, and we felt, and this worked. We were getting, our 1,000 followers became 2,000 over a weekend, and then became 3,000. So we reckoned that there was a thing there. There was a style, and we felt that the Advertiser worked in Galway over the years because we had a lot of personalities working for people who were known around Ronnie, our chairman, the likes of Mary Connor, our journalist, Tom Kinney writes for us, and different people over the years. So we felt that perhaps we should make our social media replicate what the paper was doing, be personality based, be a bit dysfunctional, be a bit sort of unafraid to offend, but we were also conscious too that when you are doing online with social media, you have to maintain the same rules and regulations that pertain to the publication of the printed paper. So we were doing that, and we were doing it and having fun, but all at the same time sort of maintaining the standards that you'd expect in the paper, and that worked quite well for us. And we would cover events, breaking news, maybe 20 hours a day. There was stuff going up on the Advertiser, and if things weren't happening, we made things happen. And we had photographs every day. We pumped out, photographs of Galway sunsets. We've had so many Galway sunsets. That seems to be a newish thing. We're going to put up a rule now soon saying no more sunsets, please, because we've had an awful lot of sunsets. We love getting photography in, but we get like 1 million sunsets every day.
Did you feel almost like given this new journalistic opportunity, because your Wednesday night deadline to get a Thursday paper out had suddenly changed to, guess what, we can share news every day of the week? Totally.
When I started off, we had one deadline a week, and journalism was different, because when I started off, you could cover a county council meeting on a Friday, and you said, that's my story, that's my lead for next Thursday. And then local radio came along, and suddenly, that can't be my lead, because local radio will have it on in an hour or so. And then social media came along, and you know that if you don't put it up straight away, it's dead in 15 minutes. And if you don't put it up in 15 minutes, somebody else will have it up, and then you're reacting. So it changed everything. But for those of us who liked that kind of panic and that kind of chaos, it was great if we were able to get a story up, and then if something else changed, then we would amend it, and so on. So it was great, but you needed a certain type of personality. You needed a sort of chaotic personality to engage in social media on that scale, and it really worked for us. And our fan base, the number of likes grew and grew, and we were determined always never to actually just be totally looking for clickbait or get. We just said, listen, it's going to be like a conversation in a pub in Galway. We will start the conversation and see what happens. If it starts a row, if it starts a debate or whatever, within reason, and let it grow like that. And it did grow, and it became very successful. On top of all that, though, what it did do, it brought the Advertiser brand to a new generation. So all of a sudden, we were I won't say cool again, because we'd hate to think that we were ever uncool. But when you're 40 and you're dead dancing, it's a little bit like that. And that is one of the things that I sense about some traditional page for newspapers. In order to make the jump to social media too quickly, you end up then really looking like a person in their 50s dancing and at a wedding, and awkward. So you sort of getting down there with the kids, whereas we just wanted to be organic and just grow off its own accord.
So talk to me then about management buy-in. So you'd embraced social media around 2010, 2011. You'd always had a website, maybe back from the early 90s or even the 90s. But from the boardroom's perspective, and in terms of digital transformation, were the guys in the boardroom and the ladies in the boardroom concerned with monetization?
Yes, there'll always be a focus on the bottom line in one sense, and whereas we've now seen the likes of the Guardian and Rupert Murdoch and many others have failed to actually monetize the web around the world, it wasn't going to be any different in Galway. But we did see that the web and the social media in particular had a role in making the brand stronger, so that if people did advertise with us, then they were getting 50,000 printed papers a week. They're getting their ads in 40,000 digital editions, and now they have 100,000 Facebook followers, 20,000-30,000 Twitter followers. So they're getting a big package now. It is, it just means that they get more bang for their buck. And what it did mean is that the Advertiser, which was and still is the strongest advertising medium in the region, would retain that title. And there are a lot of people come along and they copy what we did and try to do what we did. But the Advertiser ploughed on. We have 100,000 followers on Facebook, but the paper is still very strong, and it has worked out that way. It has actually contributed to the strength of the company at a time when local papers were in trouble. In the last 10 years in Galway, 3 local papers have closed down, and we don't want to be the 4th, and we don't think we will be. But in order to stave that day and to preserve the length of life of the Advertiser, we push social media. We don't know papers. We feel that if paid-for papers do have an expiry date, and I hope it never happens, but if they do, we think that the free paper will last a little bit longer because it is that much more accessible.
So let's talk about journalists being the guardians of the truth, and we're living in a time where 2016 was famous for echo chambers and fake news.
Yeah.
I sometimes feel that journalists in the media industry have even much more of a role to play, whereas maybe when digital came on board you thought, gosh, we're drowning in this social media, we have no relevance. But in actual fact, I think it has swung back to that you need to protect and preserve the truth. You
do, really, and it is very important, because at the end of the day, really, we place a lot of emphasis on the story, that everything is a story, and that no matter what medium come along and change over the years, whether it's printed or whether it's on parchment or whether it's printed on the back of leaves or whatever it eventually goes into, it will always be the need for good content and good stories. And there was always a sense too that social media and the web in general can be overwhelming, because you can be overwhelmed, and if it's overwhelming for us who are putting it together, it's doubly so for the readers who are getting 10 times as much as they need every day. And in the same way, if somebody's in a restaurant and they're hungry and all of a sudden they get 4 tables of food put in front of them, it's not going to make it any more appetizing. It just creates chaos. And so we feel that we have to focus on things that made the Advertiser work well in the beginning. And one of the concepts that we push a lot in the Advertiser is this thing of Galwayness, really. And I'm not originally from Galway, but I'm most of my adult life in Galway. Same for yourself. We're all kind of attracted here by a sense of Galwayness, and Galwayness is it's an untouchable thing, really, but it's why we like living in Galway. What is it about Galway? Why are we not living in Mullingar as opposed to but Galway has something unusual, and it has a great sense of social responsibility. There's a nice sort of standard of living here. And we'd like to preserve that and push that at all times. And we use the Advertiser Facebook and social media to actually push that concept out there, working in conjunction with even local charities and things. Local charities and local causes. We have an audience of 100,000. They're not our audience. They're just people that are in a pen, and we'd like to offer that pen to all the charities and causes that like to use it, so that Galwayness can continue to be the concept that makes us all live here.
So what about other organisations? So I'll be having more digital transformation conversations with other people in other industries. But what do you think is the fundamental thing that needs to happen for an organisation, a business, or an industry or a sector to move into the digital age? Is it mindset? Is it management buy-in? What is it?
It's a combination of everything, really, because management buy-in will possibly come along after a change of mindset, really, in one set. And it depends on the personnel you have as well. You really have to have the personnel. There's no point trying to do something you can't do. And that's why it's handy to be able to identify what you can and can't do. No matter what product someone makes in life, if you're making widgets, you may be the best widget maker in the world, but you may be the worst salesperson, you may be the worst marketing person, you may be terrible at accounts, and therefore your widgets will fail. So really, it's a secret for life for us all. Is you realise what you're good at and realise what you're not good at. So you don't do things you're not good at and make a fool of yourself. And you do the things you are good at, and so therefore you highlight your own strengths. The same way with social media is that people should identify what they have in their business. We tell all our advertisers at any given time that in every business and everything in Galway there is a story. If somebody is making a certain type of bread and it's imported from some place, or making it and it has a unique selling point, they might not think that that's of interest to anybody else. But there is a story there. We find that with our people who advertise with us, we give them a medium through which they tell their stories, and they get business back through it. Because so they're realising that their strength is in making their product or making their service, and our strength as the biggest media partner in Galway, the best one to have, will actually get that message out there for them. the same with any business. Know what you're good at and do that. And if you want to be successful at social media, get people to help you who can highlight what you're good at.
And that brings me nicely to my final point, because you almost have an edge on any other industry, because I think the heart of digital transformation is getting to know what your story is.
Yes.
And communicating that online.
Yeah.
So, did you have an advantage? Because guess what, journalists are storytellers.
Yes, we did have an advantage, and in one sense, we set out not to sell the advertiser on. We weren't selling a product, as opposed to somebody who has a Facebook page to sell their product. We were selling the advertiser, which was then selling the products, and we were selling a concept of Galway, through which we would hope people would engage. One thing about social media, which is different from traditional media, is that it's a two-way conversation, and you're creating a community, and you have to be prepared as well to get feedback. When you're dealing with, say, a database or a following of 100,000, you're going to, no matter what post you put up, you're going to please some people and annoy some others. An example is in the morning time, one of our journalists, Kieran, when he's in early, he puts up the weather. He says, "Good morning, Galway, the sun is shining in your square." And that's fine, and you'll get so many likes. And then you have somebody saying, "Well, it's not shining where I am. What do you mean?" And so on. You're leaving people disagreeing with you about the weather. So one thing about social media is that it can be overwhelming, but you just don't get caught up in it to the point that you have to, even though it is a sense of community, you don't have to converse with everybody. You just create the community there and let it evolve itself,
So have you enjoyed your jump into the digital age? Has it been interesting?
It has been very interesting. It has built up a new audience, but as I said, it can be overwhelming, because if you get too caught up in it, you'll be doing it 24/7, and that's not a good thing, because too much of it is a bad thing as well. It has to have its hours, even though in our business, news is around the clock. But for a normal business, really, you need to have your social media needs to be confined to the time. You don't want to be totally at the behest of it. But it is an important part of any business. Yeah.
Declan Varley, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to me and for joining me on JSB Talks Digital Transformation.
You're welcome.
Shoutouts.
In this part of the show, I give shoutouts to brands and individuals whose work online is worth talking about. In this episode, I'm giving shoutouts to galwayadvertiser.ie and 3 reasons why you should follow them.
1.
If you are a media outlet struggling to capture the imagination of your newspaper readers or radio listeners, then take a close look at what the Galway Advertiser are doing on Facebook. Their page now boasts over 100,000 likes, with engagement reaching millions of people every day.
2.
The digital advertising package Galway Advertiser offer suit all business types, and given their online audience, it proves a very attractive prospect when looking for return on your advertising investment.
3.
Lastly, they also have a podcast with shows produced by their arts and entertainment and sports reporters. Check out their podcast at soundcloud.com/Advertiser Podcasts. Follow Galway Advertiser online. On Facebook, you'll find them at Galway Advertiser. On Twitter, they're at Galway Ad and have over 20,000 followers. And finally, on Instagram, you can follow them at Galway Advertiser, and they have almost 5,000 followers.
JSB Talks.
Today's column, Digital Transformation from Traditional to Digital Media. I began my career as a broadcast journalist. It was 2001 and the radio station had moved to digital editing from the old-fashioned reel-to-reel tape. I was equipped with a digital recording device and external microphone. As a roving reporter in the northwest of Ireland, I love being out and about and investigating news stories and getting exclusive interviews. Some of those stories included the government's first cabinet meeting outside of Dublin, which took place in Glenveigh Castle in County Donegal. I attended 2 months of the Morris Tribunal, a public inquiry into allegations of wrongdoing against certain members of the Gardaí, our police force, in County Donegal, criminal trials at Letterkenny Circuit Court, and even reporting on more tragic events such as murders and missing persons inquiries. I was also responsible for editing my own audio and packaging it for news bulletins. And of course, I read the news. This was the very last piece of my job. but often people thought it was the only part of my job. I often wondered where they thought I got the news. I also managed the news website back then, and even 16 years ago, we were uploading news on the website daily. Social media, however, was not a part of my working life. Fast forward to 2017, and I am still a professional storyteller. But now I do it exclusively online, and I help people, organisations, and companies bring their skills into the digital age. I truly believe that at the heart of digital transformation in any organisation is storytelling and building a library of authentic, meaningful, and transformative stories that impact an audience in some way. As I sit here back behind the mic and in a radio studio, I am smiling and celebrating that my storytelling days have just gotten even better in the digital age. The power to share stories to a mass audience is there for everyone to take advantage of. So what are you waiting for? Don't let fear or a lack of knowledge paralyse progress in your organisation. Embrace these remarkable times and leave the legacy of your message online. You have a responsibility to be a truth agent for the company you work for or for the organisation that you lead. If you want to have a digital transformation conversation with me, simply drop me an email to joanne@digitaltraining.ie. And remember, every transformation starts with a conversation or a story.
Social media tool of the week.
For anyone new to the world of online PR, Press Release Wizard is a super helpful tool. I was sharing this tool with new members of my team this week. On the Press Release Wizard website, you are guided through how to write each section of your press release in real time. It will guide you on how to write each section, from the heading to the intro, the main body and the conclusion. And when you're finished, it will send you a finished copy to your inbox. You can then copy and paste it from your email and send it out. After using it a couple of times, you'll remember how to write a press release that works. So go check it out at toolkit.prnewswire.com/press release wizard. Thanks for tuning in to the first episode of JSB Talks Digital Transformation. As always, I have everything discussed on today's show on my blog at digitaltraining.ie. If you or your organisation is involved in digital transformation, then please get in touch and we can discuss having you on my show. Drop me an email to joanne@digitaltraining.ie and write podcast in the subject line. To ensure you never miss an episode of JSB Talks Digital, make sure you subscribe on your smartphone on iTunes or Stitcher. You can also subscribe on SoundCloud. I'd love your feedback on this series, so be sure to tweet me your thoughts to @tweetsbyJSB or post a comment on our Facebook page at Digital Training Institute. I'm Joanne Sweeney-Burke. This is JSB Talks Digital Transformation. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you soon.
JSB Talks Digital Transformation.